I'm Jo, and I'm a compulsive overeater and bulimic, and I'm just going to say a little prayer before we get going. God, may I be confident in the trials of my life. You will be my constant companion. Whenever I cannot stand, you will carry me. May I have no fear of what may happen tomorrow, for the same God who cares for me today will care for me then, and for every day of my life. You will shield me from suffering, or give me the strength to bear it patiently. Your yoke is easy and your burden is light. May I then be at peace and put aside all the useless worries. Thank you so much for asking me to be of service and to do the share here. This is a meeting that I have come to love and come to very regularly, and it's really amazing to be asked to be of service here. Um, when I was asked to do the chair, I try not to do too much preparation, because in the past that was how I used to feel a sense of control about things. I'm not saying I never do any preparation for anything, but the point of this thing is that it's supposed to be the experience, strength, and hope that is already in me, rather than something that I go away and revise for so that I sound really good to everyone and then you all love me. Because that was pretty much the motivation for everything that I used to do. And sometimes it wasn't that you'd all love me, it was so that you wouldn't all hate me, like I hated myself, because that is how I used to feel before I came into these rooms. And I think, I don't think I'm unlike people in here, in that I had a difficult childhood. My parents did the best job they could. It just wasn't a very good job. And I grew up in an atmosphere and in an environment that was genuinely unsafe and emotionally extremely unsafe. And as a result, I developed coping mechanisms. And amongst these coping mechanisms is compulsive eating. And the compulsive eating has looked like so many different things over the decades. It started off almost definitely as compulsive binging, consuming mostly sugary foods that would, that would numb me and give me a sense of disconnection from whatever fear, pain, sadness that I felt. I remember having suicidal ideation when I was 9 years old, because I was so miserable and so lonely and so afraid of my brothers, who essentially kind of ruled the house in, and I know we're not supposed to mention other publications, but there's a book about boys marooned on a desert island and what ends up happening in the deterioration of their normal societal rules and how they bully the sort of weakest and the youngest. And that was kind of what my family was a bit like. And, we haven't really fully recovered from those experiences as children, but I think it's, again, like I said, not uncommon in these rooms to find those of us that have had these difficult experiences. And, for whatever reason, whether it was learned, whether it was my own invention, I learned to protect myself by being compulsive in behaviors. And sometimes those behaviors were compulsively gorging myself on things, whether it was food or locking myself away in my room to read book after book after book, or sometimes it was restrictive. So ironically, the locking myself away in my room in isolation is restrictive, but then sometimes not eating for days on end, feeling that I needed to go without in order to kind of prove my physical invincibility, because my emotional invincibility was just so lacking. And although I was raised with a religion that was actually extremely practical and involved growing up, I never really felt connected to it. And probably in my early teens decided that it wasn't for me. And so I did really, looking back, despite having, a mother, a father, a stepfather, a nice home, a good school, I grew up with a hole in my soul. And I think that hole in my soul wasn't necessarily because I wasn't raised with a religion that kind of taught me faith in God. I think it was a combination of all the different factors of my childhood. But I also think that having that kind of compulsive behavior was probably my refuge, and it was maybe one of the things that stopped me from doing more harm to myself. And so I try to treat this disease, this addiction, whatever you want to call it, I try to treat it as a kind of an entity in my brain, if you like, that takes over when I'm afraid or feel threatened or feel unsafe in a situation. And because it's kind of fundamentally a part of me, rather than trying to get rid of it, it's a bit like sort of learning to reassure and soothe it so that it doesn't take up as much space in my brain as it would like to. So yeah, so that was my childhood, and I think if I can almost identify one thing that permeated it, it was that sense of loneliness. And I did have friends. I had lovely friends growing up, but I think I still felt lonely sometimes in a room of my friends because I felt other. I felt different. I felt like I didn't quite belong. I thought there was something a bit not quite right. And yeah, as I grew older and immersed myself in food dysfunction and became more and more unhappy, I eventually ended up in rehab in my late teens. And in rehab, I discovered 12 steps. It was a cross addictions rehab facility. So there were other people there with what I considered to be much more serious addictions than me. My first meeting that I walked into, everyone sat in the room and said a few words about why they were at rehab. And I remember thinking to myself, all these people are damaged. I do not want to be here. I am going to take what I need and then leave. And of course, today I walk into these rooms and I'm like, all these people are my people. This is where I belong. But yeah, let's talk about the transformation that kind of gets there. So yeah, so that place was kind of amazing because I began to see that the hole in my soul was one of the reasons that I was engaged in so much self-loathing and so much dysfunctional behavior. Um, and so I learned about loving food. I learned about, loving consumption of food. I learned about loving behaviors. I learned actually mostly the main thing I took away from that rehab was that it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to make mistakes. And also welcome to the human race was actually the one thing that one of the therapists there said to me. Was when I kind of got to the end of a what will happen if, what will happen if, what will happen if. And we were in a group and I was like, and if I don't do this, then I won't be perfect. And he said, welcome to the human race. And that kind of felt really loving. And yeah. So I had amazing experiences of that, but I didn't really work a program and I didn't go to 12-step meetings. I actually went to a meeting after rehab and it was very unboundaried and unsafe and left that meeting. But I guess that's what was supposed to be. That was in 1994. And I had fellows, I carried on therapy, but I didn't work a program. And what ended up happening is that I had a series of really codependent relationships through my 20s, which were basically me pretending to be the best girlfriend that my boyfriend could ever wish, because I still didn't quite believe that they would want to be with me because of me. And yeah, it was really kind of um, it was, I guess, common to switch from one compulsion to another. I think I probably still had some binging tendencies, but I definitely, I wasn't binging and purging anymore. I wasn't restricting so much. But yeah, instead I was restricting myself. I was pretending that I was not a person that had the right to be in the room and have an opinion. And I was, by pretending to be someone that I thought they would only ever want to keep around, I was actually being really manipulative. And I would tell myself, I was being self-sacrificing, and actually it was, yeah, just trying to control other people around me and filling me with resentment. And so I would be like snappy and unpleasant and sharp. And then I found another 12-step program for dealing with dysfunctional relationships. And I had some really good recovery from that program. That was in 2006 or 7. And I was in those rooms for about 3 or 4 years. And then I met someone. So of course I was so excited and really happy, because then I thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to now do the thing that I think I'm supposed to do in life, which is I think I'm supposed to get married and have children. And that relationship was disastrously bad. And it wasn't always disastrously bad, but it became disastrously bad. And yeah, I eventually ended up binging and purging again, which was a massive taboo for me because I had stopped binging and purging, at least when I was in rehab. So I realized there's something seriously wrong, and it still took me a year and a half to come back to OA. And that was in 2018. And so in 2018, I walked back into these rooms, and I wish I could tell you that I had abstinence from day one. I did, by the grace of God, have the purging taken away from me. I stopped binging and purging, but I carried on binging, I carried on restricting, and my recovery journey since then has not been smooth. But I have remained consistent, and I think it's because I finally accepted that this is a chronic progressive disease. This disease does not go away. It gets worse if I don't do anything about it, and it comes back every morning. And it is probably something that stopped me from killing myself when I was a teenager, but it's also something that's now with me for life. And hopefully it makes me into a better person, but it doesn't really matter because it's here and it's going to be with me forever. So what I can say is it brings me to all of you, which is a gift and a blessing. And I wouldn't have this community of support and fellowship and advice and insights and love, really. Yeah, love and identification if I didn't have a compulsive eating disorder. So at least for that, I can be thankful for it. And so when I hear sometimes people saying I'm a grateful compulsive overeater, for me, that's what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for all of you and this world that is available to me because of this disease that I have. So I wanted to talk a bit more about the hope, because the hope for me in this program has been that all of those things that I learned would keep me safe when I was a child were actually things that destroyed me. But there's also a flip side to everything. And in 12 steps, we learn about our
12 minutes gone.
12 minutes gone.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. We learn about our defects and our assets. And in our defects and our assets, it sounds like a really harsh word, but actually it's just the thing that I created that is defective and doesn't work anymore. My two primary defects are self-righteousness and self-pity. And the self-righteousness, I think, is just about that feeling that things are being done in the right way and therefore I'm safe, or things are being done in the wrong way and therefore either I'm not safe or I need to change them. And that self-righteousness is such a root of resentment and expectation and difficulty for me. And the thing is that I know that it's an asset as well, because in my life, the way I say things to people makes them feel like a sense of certainty that I have, that really reassures them. And so definitely professionally, I've gained from this. But I think that that sense of certainty also has made me unteachable. So it's just been really hard for like new things that contradict me to get in. And I'm so grateful that in this program, I get to see that that is something that holds me back, that that's something where I need to let other people's thoughts, opinions, ideas in. I think also, that compulsion remains in me as my coping mechanism for things. And so that kind of just desire to make things the way I want them, that desire to make things the way I want them all by myself, it doesn't work. And so, yeah, letting go of that on a daily basis, multiple times on a daily basis, is a huge part of my recovery.
1 minute, Joe.
Acknowledge, thanks. And the last thing I really want to talk about is loss and loneliness. So the past 3 years of my life have probably been the hardest. In September 2022, my father died after I'd nursed him for 4 months of cancer. And a month later, we found out my mum, who was divorced from him and living with someone else, had stage 4 cancer, which means it's basically incurable. In March 2023, I found out I had cancer. And I had surgery, and thank God I'm free, cancer free. In March 2024, we found out my stepdad had cancer. And then in March 2025, my mum died. And I'm here and in these rooms, and I'm grateful and I'm contented and I'm happy. And mostly I am not full of self-pity. I feel connected, I feel protected, I feel a part of something. No longer do I have the loneliness, no longer do I have the food obsession. acknowledge thanks. No longer am I using all of these things to numb because I feel like I have my higher power, like I said, as my constant companion in my life. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.